Welcome to Paper Movies and Novelization Book Club. This month, we picked the book Hook by Terry Brooks, based on a film by Steven Spielberg. Jeremy is going to take this summary away. Even though I picked the book, he's going to be a gentleman and take this summary and tell you guys a little bit about Hook.
Well, thank you, Matthew. Hook is one of the strangest sequels you ever come across because it works as a standalone film. It's what if Peter Pan grew up? He's a married man, he's a businessman, he's a lawyer, and any of his childish spirit is gone. He is a grumpy man who shrugs off the responsibility of his children in favor of just making more money. He and his family, after he misses his son's baseball game, go to England where they meet up with Granny Wendy, obviously. Gwendy is the correct name. Granny Wendy. Wendy is now an elderly lady, and the grandmother to Peter's wife, Myra. And they go there, Peter's hates his kids and yells at them a bunch, tells them to grow up over and over again. And then Captain Hook kidnaps his children. Peter has to go rescue them. And in order to do that, he has to remember what it's like to be a kid. This is a weird one because this was supposed to be a Disney film. I wanted to throw that out there. It was supposed to be a Disney film in the 80s, and Spielberg and Disney parted ways, and it was made 10 years later. This is also Terry Brooks's first novelization, and after writing it, he wanted it to be his last novelization.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until George Lucas approached him with The Phantom Menace that he went back to writing novelizations. But I want to go first because I've been really pivotal in this discussion with all of us trying to be like, save it for the show. I really, really liked this book. It's one of my favorite things we've done for Paper Movies this year.
Are you serious? You're 100% dead serious. Okay.
Yeah. There are certain things I don't like about it, but it's the same things that I don't like about the film. I've only seen the film once, and that was probably 10 years ago. I think they put it on Cartoon Network, and all I remembered from it was the baseball game and the obnoxious Lost Boys and how 90s they looked. And I forgot everything that was interesting about the movie, and I kind of just went on with my life. I was a little too young when I think I wasn't born yet when Hook came out, or I was a really little kid.
Yeah, I think it was 1991.
Okay, yeah, so it was a little before my time. So that wasn't the Peter Pan film I grew up with. I grew up with the Disney one, and then they made one in the early 2000s. So it's like they make a Peter Pan film every decade.
Yeah.
They made that one with the tiny little baby kid, in the 2010s that no one cared about, called Pan. And then, of course, there's Pan's Labyrinth, which is obviously a sequel to Peter Pan.
Right, yeah.
I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I'm used to Terry Brooks as a long-winded writer. If you read any of his Shannara books, they're typically 600 pages to 800 pages. So it was weird to read something that's barely 200 pages from him. But I thought it was pretty solid. It was one of those novelizations where it doesn't really add a lot, in my opinion. But I don't remember the film that well. It just felt like we were just continuing with the plot.
Right. I mean, it was driven solid, just like the film. There's some minor changes we could talk about here in a little bit, but
yeah, I'll get off my soapbox right now.
It's fine. It's I think it's interesting that there's an author's note here in the beginning by Terry Brooks, and this is what I thought was very interesting, because there's, we've heard, I think, Jeremy, you'd said that there was a lot of drama, right, between with Terry Brooks not wanting to do novelizations after his experience with this novel.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
he hints towards that because, like, the last paragraph in that author's note, or one of the last paragraphs, says, "I relate to this story to you as it was to me, having tried the best I could to keep the details straight." So that just, to me, is saying, yeah, he didn't really get the info that he really needed in order to write the story out 100%. And he said, when I could not make myself stay silent, all writers. Okay, I messed up that. I've embellished at times and commented when I could not make myself stay silent. All writers, I fear, have that failing. So I don't know if he's saying that he just kept adding some stuff, or made some stuff up because he wasn't informed on exactly how things were supposed to go. I don't know, but he did Hook, and then later on he did one more novelization,
Which was
right,
the Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace. That's right, not the Revenge of the
Which
Sith.
is a far superior book than this. Don't get me wrong. Phantom Menace is a lot better, but that's because George Lucas was there writing it with him.
Okay.
And they sat down, they had discussions on what the Sith were going to be like, what these characters were going to be like.
Yeah. See, what was, to me, this book, I thought it was actually a chore to get through. I did not like it that much. I had a lot of questions that I needed answers to, and I didn't get them. I did a live stream on my channel, me and my wife. We watched Hook like twice, and then had this live stream where we were talking about it, going over all these little details, all these little strange things that I picked up on. And I was hoping that we would get answers to that in this book, but we did not. It just made me more angry towards certain characters that we'll get into later. But I thought it was pretty much on par with the film, explaining things well. Added a little bit of some stuff that I thought was unnecessary, kind of drug the story out some. Like when he's exercising, when Peter Banning is exercising to get back into shape as Peter Pan, he's running around a tree, and like each quarter of the tree, it's a different season, which was kind of cool, but it was also very unnecessary. I was hoping that the book would explain more about time, because it feels like time in Neverland is slower. When it like 3 days, was it really 3 days, or was it like 3 years for him to get back into shape, to discover who he was, to be able to go save his kids? But I don't know, maybe he just loses a bunch of weight in an instant in Neverland. It's just weird. I have problems with Tinkerbell, but
that's weird from the movie though.
yeah, there's some stuff in the book that I had to flag. This is the first time, guys, I put little flags on my pages about weird things, but we're not going to cover all this stuff in here. We're not going to go over everything in here. But we can talk about that here in a little bit to get some more thoughts on characters, development, and all that stuff. But I want to pass it over to Mikey, who's labeled Big Mac on the channel. Mikey, what are your thoughts on Hook, the Terry Brooks novelization?
Well, first let me say that I have been a Peter Pan fanatic since I was little, of course. I have watched Hook like numerous thousand. I own the movie. I can practically quote the movie without even watching it. If that tells you anything.
Well, before we did Hook, before we picked this up to read it, I saw on your social media accounts that you had made paper cutouts of Peter Pan's sword, and I thought that was funny.
Oh yeah, in fact, I have it over here. You want to see it?
It's fine. We'll get it. You can pick it up when Adam gets into his thoughts on Hook.
Well, I really enjoyed this film too. I really enjoyed the film. I love it. Like, Robin Williams did great as an adult Peter Pan. This is actually the only film that I have. Hold on. This is the only film that I actually have both the regular novelization and the junior novelization to it. Like I said, the film's great. Love the music. I'm kind of with you though, Matthew. The book was kind of a chore to get through. I don't know what happened. It's just I read like a few chapters of it, and it just wasn't. I just kind of started losing interest. Not that it was bad. It's just like I think I was comparing it too much to the film. I was expecting that same kind of magic that you get from the film, and it just was kind of more serious. Like if you guys get what I'm saying.
Which I thought was decent portrayal of Peter. I thought they did a better job with Peter Banning in the book than he appeared in the film. But I mean, of course, you can't really top Robin Williams. So, he.
I will say this though: some of the dialogue in the book felt like Robin Williams would say that.
Yes,
as the character of Peter Pan.
Yeah, I agree. They did cut out a couple of things that were kind of fun to see from the movie. Like we're about to, as always, get into some spoilers here, but they cut out, or at least they just mention it like so briefly that I missed it. But they cut out Toodles at the end flying.
No, he's in the end of the book.
He flies. He flies away.
Oh,
it just says he
does.
Yeah, he lifts up and just flies away and waves goodbye. But I mean, I can understand you missing it because the book, to me and you, it's exhausting. It's the longest 211-page book that I've ever read.
No, dude, we read Ghostbusters 1 and 2. That was far worse than this.
Those were, yeah.
That's some of the worst that we've done for paper movies. And we read The Predator. The bottom of the
you're scraping the bottom there. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's just like what was hard for me was part of the reason why this film is so great is it has a couple of iconic performances from Dustin Hoffman playing Captain James Hook, and from Robin Williams playing Peter Pan, and it's just I don't. Like I said, it was hard, kind of getting into the book, because all I wanted to do was watch the film, because and me and my wife actually did watch the film after I finished the book, and I was just like, after watching, just like, yeah, this is better, But like I said, the book wasn't bad. Terry Brooks did a good job writing it. It was just I just didn't get the same impact from it that I would watching the film.
Yeah, Mikey. You're a huge fan of Hook. Is there anything about the novelization that you thought was bad, that you thought could have been just like, maybe they shouldn't have done that in the book?
I don't know if I would say that, but there is a few things in the book that I think they could have put in the movie that would have helped explain a little bit more. Where Jack forgets about his sister. He forgets her name. And everything like that. Where in the movie, in the baseball scene, you see the pirates holding up the sign that say "Run home, Jack," and he kind of standing there, and he's like, "Maggie," in the book, he basically walks by his sister with Captain Hook and Smee, and she calls out to him, and he's like, "Who are you?" Yeah. It kind of helps. That would have helped explain a little bit about how Neverland works. You're there for a while, and you start to forget. Just like you see it with Peter Pan, right when he becomes Peter Pan again, he forgets that he even has a wife and children because Tinkerbell asks him, "Why are you in Neverland?" And he says, "That's easy. I always want to be a little boy and have fun." So I think that would have helped if they would have had that in there. That would have helped kind of answer that question. Also, it was talking about how Captain Hook has the lost boys that he's captured continuously in his cabin, or not cabin, but in his dungeon, counting his treasures. And all that. I think that would have been something to see there, because you see all the lost boys there that are there helping Peter, but you look at all the ones that you don't see, or where's Maggie been at during this time? Well, she's been down there in the dungeon with the lost boys, So there was a few things that could have been added to the movie, I think, from the book that really would have helped explain some of the gaps in the movie.
Yeah, and on that, I was just like, I don't remember them explaining, was the crocodile dead at the end when he engulfs Captain Hook? Because I'm just like, because in the film it makes it look like, I know, but in the film it makes it look like he woke up for a minute. It's like, oh hi, eats him and then dies again.
Because his head falls. That was confusing to me too.
That's always been my question.
I mean,
And
continue. Go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm done.
I liked the stuff that they added with the clocks with Captain Hook and like made his paranoia with it. I thought that was great, but at the end with the crocodile, I was getting a little confused too. It's the same with the movie. Like I remember when me and my wife watched it, we're like, "What's the alligator's dead? It just falls on him, but where did Hook go?" And it doesn't even say it in here. It could have said like, "Oh, he got sucked into another dimension." Something. It's just like, "Oh, he's gone. He's not in the dead."
Well, it says that it swallowed him whole. But that would just mean that he just suffocated slowly.
I get maybe it said gas came out of it, right? Did it say that in the book? Because in the movie, there was gas. So maybe it was just poisonous gas, and
in the book,
he inhaled it, and he just died. Maybe.
Or he could have had a heart attack. He was elderly.
This is true.
And that if I do have some complaints, and they're very minor, this book, this story deals with like growing older. You can honestly say it's the weirdest reverse midlife crisis book I've ever seen. Peter's having a midlife crisis, like trying to come to terms with things. But it's almost like he's too responsible that he forgets to be fun, which is a weird thing. But there's some things with Hook that aren't fleshed out. With you find out in the book, I don't remember in the film, but like he's not as tall as he is. He puts on a big facade. He's not this imposing character. Like he wears platform boots. He has a wig because most of his hair's gone, and he doesn't have eyebrows. Like he's fake, and it's like he's just waited this whole time to kill Peter Pan, and that's all he's lived for.
Yeah,
and Peter's daughter, whose this name's escaping me right now,
Maggie.
is like Maggie is like, you need a mommy to take care of you, and that's not really flushed out at all in this. Which I think if Terry Brooks had gotten more information, we would have had a chapter about a young Captain Hook.
That would have been interesting.
It seemed like he would have gone there. I mean, we had the nightmare sequence with the crocodile. I mean, like, anything's possible. Or we could have had more stuff with Peter when he's young that isn't from the Peter Pan novel.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that's always weirded me out in both the book and the film, and I kind of got it this time, is the I call it the Tinkerbell seduction scene. It is the strangest thing.
Yeah, this is what I wanted.
It is the weirdest portrayal humanly possible to say that the Tinkerbell loves Peter.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
She is like an adult. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does not look like a child like the Lost Boys. I'm going to say it. I said it in my live stream when I talked about Hook. She's a pedo. She's a pedophile. Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell tries to seduce a child. And he's like, go ahead.
I will go further. It's not only pedo-ness, which I don't even think we could say on here. I think we'll get flagged and we won't be able to...
We're talking about Terry Brooks' Hook novelization. Pedophilia in it. It's disgusting.
But it's also interspecies erotica.
It's just true. She's a little fairy. It's so weird. And it's like I had it marked somewhere on here. Go ahead, Mike.
If you remember in the cartoon too, Tinkerbell was jealous of anyone that was in love with Peter, especially Wendy. So even there in the cartoon, you see a little bit of the Tinkerbell loving Peter Pan.
See, but I mean, it's like, but Tink closed one of her hands over his, pressed herself against him, put her lips on his, and gave him a real kiss. And he's like, I don't know what this feeling is that I have inside me right now. And then all of a sudden, he remembers his wife and children, and she's like, don't. And then she says, don't ruin the moment.
Well, because Tinkerbell's selfish. That's like established in all of them.
She's an
adulterer.
Yes.
Matthew is talking about the sanctity of marriage here.
But it's like, oh, look, he's reverted back to a child. I love him. This is creepy. This is when it gets creepy. I mean, she had his ID
I wish
card.
We had no one here.
She had his ID card. It says it because I remember seeing in the film, like, is that his ID card on her wall? And it's like, oh, his identification card's mounted on her wall like a family portrait. She's a weirdo. She's a freak.
Is she the reason that Sting wrote "Every Breath You Take"?
I do not.
That was for the Disney version of the script in the 80s. That was going to be featured in there.
I did notice
the biggest question I had was, Tinkerbell takes Peter Pan to Neverland when he's a baby.
Also,
if you don't grow up and if you don't grow old in Neverland, how did Peter Pan age? To be a teenager, kind of. Was she kind of, growing him up?
She's grooming him? Is that what you're trying to imply?
She's supposed to be like a motherly figure to the Lost Boys. So that does add another creepy factor. Tinkerbell.
But I mean, Peter's supposed to be their father figure in a way, too, even when he was a kid. Like,
that's true. They all kept, like with Rufio, he was the father figure. He was like the big brother.
Rufio is the worst character I've ever seen in a Steven Spielberg film.
He was better in the film than he was in the book. I feel like there was more resolution.
Obnoxious.
Yes, he was. Very cocky.
I will say his last lines in his death spoilers were actually a bit touching. It's the only thing that he had worth saying.
Yeah.
He was one of the few. He was the only serious casualty, I think, in the whole story. Because pirates die all over the place, and it's played for laughs, which is totally weird. And then my favorite line in the whole book, when they're talking about Hook's favorite cannon and how they shoot Lost Boys out of it.
It's so disturbing. They kill children out of blasting them out of cannons. I mean, and this is a kids movie, kids book, whatever, all of it. And it's so weird. Another question that I have. Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
A question I have is, in the film, it looks like the kids are kind of wearing outfits from different time periods. So are these kids entering Neverland in different time periods? Like, oh, here's the kid from the 20s, Rufio from the 80s. You know what I mean? Like, if Peter from the 50s, probably. Late
Peter's
40s,
before that, because Granny Wendy is 92. And it definitely takes place in the 90s.
Yeah.
Rufio is from the 80s. He's like a punk rock kid. Looks like Storm from the X-Men, but with red hair.
And you get like Thud Butt, which is
which is one of the worst names ever put in the movie.
He looks like he's probably from the 20s or 30s. So, but they never explained that. I thought that would have been a cool little explanation. It's like, oh, their outfits match their time periods. They've been here for a long time. But it's not explained. Just a weird thing that they chose in costume design in the film.
You know what else is weird? That Peter Pan is an actual story in this universe.
Yes.
That's kind of meta. I kind of like it, but it's very meta.
It's kind of like Logan in a way from that film. Like there's X-Men
with the
comics.
X-Men.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not how this happened. None of this happened.
What I was gonna say was though, is I thought that they actually, I remember they're kind of making his Peter Pan's origin a little bit more, tragic. Like in the film, like in the film, like the baby carriage just rolls down the hill, and then it just but in the book, I remember them saying that the mom tried to chase after it and lost it, but in the film, it's just like, oh, lost the baby.
It shows like the baby. Yeah, he's like laying on the ground.
Yeah, and then he comes back when he's like 3 years old, and they said that they forgot about him. But and I remember, like in the reading in the book that like the mom chased after him and everything. And
but it's also okay. I can't remember in the book, Adam. Since we're talking about this part, did he say that he ran away? Because in the film it says he ran away, and he's in the net and just like rolls away. Is because he ran away because he overheard his mother talking about we're going to put him in the best schools. He's going to get a good job, and he, as an infant, he didn't want to grow up. He wanted to be a child forever. Stupid.
He didn't want to grow up because everyone who grows up has to die someday.
Yeah, and as an infant child, he knew he knew this.
But I have a question that I just thought of. So is that the same house that Wendy is at, like years later?
Yeah.
Does that mean that he's related to them?
Ooh, I don't know. I think it says that he went to a different house.
Yeah, he was adopted.
Well, I know he's adopted by Granny Wendy at some point, but which is also weird that he'd marry her granddaughter, but we're not gonna. I'll let that pass. It's a beautiful love story, but was he biologically an ancestor of Wendy?
It's not.
I don't think so. Yeah.
None of this is a beautiful love story. He's like 90 and she's in love with him when he's 40 something. And Tinkerbell loves him when he's an infant.
Well, Tinkerbell is timeless. She's probably from the dawn of time. Let's be real.
Oh, she's a perverted little fairy, I tell you.
Well, I mean, she's just taking advantage of the fact that this is a grown man. And it isn't a child. It is like, hey, maybe I can get a little action going on.
Only when he's a child, though, which is weird. I don't like it. I don't like this book. I like the film.
She's what we call an age player. She's got the age thing. She likes her men to be littles,
childish, man children. Smee, the relationship between Smee and Hook. What do you guys think about that? Is that weird to you?
No,
Smee clearly didn't like Hook, but also at the same time, he kind of did.
He just feels bad because it's like when you're at a job for a really long time and you hate it, but then when you leave, you're like, I'm gonna miss this job.
Yeah.
I think Shmi got tired of Hook.
Yeah, he started stealing his stuff at the end.
I know. And he's hanging out with the mermaids that got pretty much cut out of this book.
Yep.
Because that seems weird.
Yep.
I was reading I think Jeremy, you thought that when he goes back to that house, he was wondering if he's related to Wendy. I think he goes to a different house. I was reading that, so.
Okay. Okay.
Well, it said he found other windows to visit since his own had been locked, and I'm assuming that.
That makes more sense. I was really worried some incest was going on. Let's be real.
Oh,
but we got to ask these questions.
I mean, it's the questions that I had when I watched the film. I mean, when you watch the film, it's like, oh, it's a good film. But when you actually sit down and dissect it, there's weird things that happen that, what's going on, Hollywood? What are you doing there, Steven Spielberg?
We need to get Chris Hansen on here to dissect this book with us.
Yeah, book of paper movies. Sit down, Chris. Take a seat. Tinkerbell, take a seat. Oh gosh.
Well,
She's
the thing
probably the
is,
one
when
that
you
teaches
say
children.
when you say Steven Spielberg, Steven Spielberg doesn't write any of his scripts ever. That's not his strong suit. So we gotta question these screenwriters. This Jim V. Hart and Malia Scott Marmo and Nick Castle. We gotta question them. We need to have them on the podcast right now. Call them up.
Call who?
You know, we need to call up these screenwriters.
That would be great. I have questions, man, for Hook. So overall, I mean, anybody have anything else they need to add?
But yeah, like I said, the book Terry Brooks did a decent job writing it. Like it's an easy read. You're like I was able to get through it within like a few days. Like, but it's just I don't know what it was. I was just not interested to finish it. Like after just reading a few chapters, it's just like I'd rather watch the movie the whole way through, and normally there's times where like with the novelizations, I'm like, oh yeah, read the novelization. Like it adds so much. With this one, not so much because like you said, it was just basically on par with the film, and it's just this is like one of those novelizations that I was hoping that it, like what we were talking about, explain some things like why do people forget things or what's the deal with the crocodile, but yeah, like I said, the film is it's a great feel good film like with a happy ending, and it's just the book I was just like okay.
I will say the Tinkerbell ending, the final talk with Tinkerbell was very bittersweet. I was a sad boy despite her wanting her man boy.
Mikey, what do you think? You have anything else you would like to say about the book?
Well, the movie, is one of my favorites. It's a cult classic. Love it for all time. I'll agree with you that the book was kind of hard to get through. I will tell you, it took me at least a month and a half to finish reading, just because I had to stop here and there and, put it down, and, I had to make myself read it. But other than that, though, it's a good story. Is it the best book novelization? By far, no, it's not. But, for those that are fans of Peter Pan and Hook and all, I think it's one that you should read. Also, I happen to have the actual 1991 comic adaptation of the movie. That's also a good read to get. It actually has a couple things that the book and the movie don't have in it.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah, it's not the best novelization, but it's a good novelization. I agree that if he would have had a little bit more information to go on, that it probably would have been a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me the movie is definitely better. Some of the book doesn't capture the magic the film does, especially like the food fight scene in the film. Far superior than what you get in the book. Robin Williams' performance, always good to see him do stuff. There were some other things that I wanted to mention that I forgot about that I actually did enjoy from the book. I thought I laughed out loud at a part where Jack and Hook are playing baseball, or Hook's making Jack play baseball, and there's like treasures on the plates or mounds, I think they call it, on the mound, and a pirate runs out and tries to steal the treasure, and they like, look, he's trying to steal second. They just shoot the guy. Yeah, that's pretty funny. I like that. Stupid didn't have the treasure, but he's like, he's stealing second. Boom. And then another thing that I liked was with the final fight scene with Hook and Peter. They like go into a bar and like they take a break. It's like I see them like the gentleman type fight where they stop, they go in, they have their drink, it says like they're sipping on an ale, and then they continue fighting again, and then they stop and they take their last drink, and then they fight, and then they go back out, and before he kills, everything happens. But another thing that I thought was kind of comical but also sad is Rufio's death. Okay, Jeremy, you talked about his death, and he says one thing. It's like, oh wow, he said something that was nice and sad.
That wasn't him being a bully,
right? But they just left his dead body on the boat.
I didn't.
All they said is like, Rufio's dead, isn't he? Yep. Let's go. Like, wow. Okay, he must have been a jerk to everybody all the time.
He was definitely a J-bag, I will say that.
So they just left his body on that boat to sail off in the wind, I guess. But for the rating, I'm going to have to give the book like a D.
Oh, weak.
Or 2 out of 5. What about you guys? What about you, Mike? What do you rate the book?
I'd give it a C minus.
This is coming from a big fan. Okay.
Same.
And my reasoning for the C minus. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
The reason I give it a C minus is, just because it could have done a little bit better job of giving a little bit of a backstory. For those who may have not are familiar with Peter Pan. For those who pick up the book and say, oh, here's a book about Hook. If it's the titular character, I would have liked to have a little bit more of a backstory about Captain Hook than what we got. And there's a few other things. But yeah, a C minus is what I give it.
Okay. So Adam, what were you going to rate this?
Same as Mike. C minus.
Okay. Jeremy, I can't believe this is going to happen. Go ahead, Jeremy. What do you rate this book?
I give it a 4.12. I thought it was real nice. We don't get a lot of Terry Brooks novelizations, so you gotta take them when they come in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but I'm also rating this as someone who hasn't seen the film in a decade, doesn't remember it well. So keep that in mind. If you think of this book as it's a separate entity from the novel, from the film, you're probably going to enjoy it more. Is what you can get out of this podcast.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one.
But whatever format you decide to digest this the story in, just know that Tinkerbell is on a watch list.
Yep.
Eyes on Tink.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just I agree with you, Jeremy, about if you spend most of your life watching the film, and you're gonna have high expectations for the novelization, and it's just like I just didn't get that same, as we mentioned, that same feeling. It's just like I said, Terry Brooks did a decent job writing it. I just just lost interest. I kept losing interest as I was reading, and but it was just it's just C minus is probably the best I can give it.
Yeah, so I can't really explain why it was such a chore for me to get through. It might be that I watched the movie recently twice and enjoyed it, and then kind of talked myself out of enjoying the story after dissecting it with the whole Tinkerbell stuff and all the missing questions that, where the Lost Boys come from, what time period, how does time work, how does gravity work, because there's some weird stuff with gravity that takes place in Neverland. Is it an alternate dimension? Was it all just a dream?
Whimsical.
Is it all just a dream? It's kind of confusing. So, but that's going to do it for this month's episode with Hook. Stay tuned next month. We're going to be talking about Rambo First Blood Part 2. And Jeremy.
And possibly Rambo 3.
Yeah, so stay tuned for more information on that one. I want to give a quick shout out to I Read Movies Podcast. You can find him over on Twitter at I Read Movies Pod. Post pictures of novelizations. Pretty cool content over there, and he has a podcast as well. So check that out. Jeremy, where can people find you?
You can find me at Stupid Chainsaw Productions on the YouTube. And you can check out my podcasts, such as Paper Movies, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you can find podcasts.
Adam, where are people going to be able to find you?
Well, you can find me at my main channel, Bryant VRM, here on YouTube. You can also find me here on Paper Movies, and I also recently created a new channel for just Star Wars content. It is called Red 5 Reviews.
Awesome. And Mikey, Big Mac, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Well, you can find me on TikTok, where I do cosplays at Michael Bray 58. Also, you can find me on YouTube, where I do live streams of reviews over comics and other such stuff at Michael Bray.
Awesome. And you can find me over at the Geeks Addict, geeksaddict.com. Here. All that nonsense. But guys, thank you so much for joining us this month of the Novelizations Paper Movies Novelization Book Club. We'll see you next month.
Stay Gucci, gang.